Are child labor laws holding back our economy, or are they essential for protecting the rights and well-being of our youngest workers? In addition, what's the real solution to America's workforce shortage? Is it rolling back laws or reforming immigration policies?
Republicans all over the country, including last night in Kentucky, are voting to roll back child labor laws, calling it a thoughtful solution to get more workers back in the workforce. At the same time, they're blocking immigration reform that could give adult migrants the opportunity to fill those vacant jobs, many of them in dangerous industries. We're back with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat from the great state, our state of New York. It's great to see you. Thank you for staying extra long on Friday night. I wonder what you think the sort of ethical, moral calculation here is to say, shut the borders down, as these Republicans fully and well know they need a workforce, probably of migrants, to work in these really degrading, dehumanizing, dangerous jobs in places like slaughterhouses, and would rather have children that are already in the country work them.
What's going on, crew? Welcome back to the show. I am so glad you were able to make it back today and you decided to press play and spend some time with me today. I really appreciate that. Now, brace yourselves for a roller coaster of insights and opinions as we dive into this spicy debate swirling around the rollback of child labor laws and immigration reform. Get ready for some truth bombs and maybe a few laughs along the way. Now, before we get into the show, I just need to say this. Crew, you already know what to do. But if this is your first time here, I'm going to ask if you could be ever so kind as to drop a token in the tip cup by hitting that like button, because your support fuels the journey. And as you guys know, I am grateful for every supporter that I have. Now, let's go ahead and get into the show.
I mean, there is no ethical or moral calculation here that I think Republicans are working with. Putting the first and foremost, the amount of protections that they heap on to these places that are so dangerous, themselves operating so unethically, and making them so dangerous for any human, adult or child, to be operating in. But the idea that Republicans, in order to win an election, say we need to hermetically seal the border, when they know that that is economic self-sabotage to the U.S. economy. And they are saying, let's do it anyway. And to compensate for the negative effects, we're going to allow and throw people's kids into factories. That is what they are doing in rolling back child labor laws while being as xenophobic and anti-immigrant as they are. And while ginning up this false narrative about this being a crisis. And by the way, by then also preventing and blocking any legislation that would provide not just a path to citizenship, but a path to work papers, a path to allowing people who want to work to be paired with American businesses who need people to work. And I mean, there is not only no moral calculation, there is no economic calculation, there is no logical calculation, there is only a political calculation. And that political calculation is we are going to keep whining about it. Mm-hmm. We are going to keep pretending this is a crisis while contributing to actual problems. And then we're going to block the solution so that we can campaign on it over and over and over. And we can call it caravans. We can call it migrant crises. We can call it family separation. And they will just recycle it over and over and over again in order to gin up just so much animosity and destruction in this country and racism in this country, because that's the only thing that the Republican Party even is standing on at this point.
You say it's a political calculation. I think that part is clear, but at the same time, it's like, if you told me that they're trying to weaken child labor laws on its face as a headline, that should not be politically expeditious. The reason they've managed to be able to do it is because nobody's talking about migrants anymore. Nobody's talking about the value of migrants, and that includes Democrats.
Absolutely.
I mean, are you dismayed that this White House, it acknowledges or it believes that it has a political problem on the border, and it is playing decidedly on sort of the Republican turf here in terms of what it's suggested, what it's agreed to, the executive orders that have been sort of reported on thus far? Or are you dismayed by that and the sort of contours of this conversation?
I am dismayed, and I'm very often find myself in shock at our current political situation, not just, I'm rarely in shock at the depravity of the Republicans, but sometimes, and this is long what I've been saying, sometimes we have, as Democrats, have to grow a little bit of a spine around here. And part of that means defending immigration as a core value of the United States of America. Yes, on a moral and on an identity basis, but on a nuts and bolts basis. The United States, our culture, our population, our economy needs immigration like lungs need oxygen. And when you cut it off, we will start to die. When you look at other developed economies that have adopted xenophobic or more closed border policies, they enter into decades of economic stagnation. You don't need to look far for that to happen. We do not have to be afraid to say immigration is one of the best things to happen to the United States of America. And what we need to do is champion policies to make it easier to be documented, to get a work permit. We need a path to citizenship in the United States of America. We need to make it easier to have work permits in the United States of America. And we need to be unafraid to unapologetically defend immigration and make it easier to be an immigrant and to migrate to the United States of America, because God knows we need it.
All right, crew, we just got finished taking a look at that. And all I got to say to that is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, step right up to the greatest show on earth, or at least the most baffling. We've got Democrats and Republicans and policy proposals that'll make your head spin faster than a merry-go-round on warp speed. And front and center to this political circus, none other than our favorite big booty Latina, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or our beloved AOC. She's been weaving a tale so rich it could be spun into gold, or at least that's what she'd have you believe. Now, AOC, she's been on a tear lately, criticizing Republicans for their thoughtful solutions on how to get more workers back into the workforce. Their master plan? Roll back child labor laws and send them young whippersnappers back to the coal mines. And while you're at it, why not just stand in the way of meaningful immigration reform? But since you're watching me right now, I already know that you possess the ability to critically think. So let's go ahead and pump the brakes for a second and check up under the hood of this political outrage machine. AOC paints a picture of Republicans twirling their mustaches while plotting to put 11 and 13-year-olds to work. But surprise, surprise, she's actually missing a few little intimate details in her masterpiece of misconceptions. Let's talk about House Bill 255. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link for it down in the description box so you can check it out for yourself. It's a thrilling piece of legislation sponsored by Rep. Philip Pratt that aims to align Kentucky's child labor laws with federal standards. Now, if you listen to AOC, like many liberals who were affected with TDS do, you'd actually think that this bill was the brainchild of a villain in a Dickens novel. And like many on the left, you'd be wrong, because the truth is it has zero to do with child exploitation and more to do with giving them more opportunities. Under this law, 16 and 17-year-olds can work up to 8 hours during a non-school day and up to 30 hours during a school week. That's right. We're talking about high schoolers, not little Timmy who just learned how to tie his shoelaces. And guess what? They can only clock in those hours with their parents' permission and a decent GPA. But AOC, and her infinite wisdom, fails to mention that federal law doesn't slap on any daily or weekly hour caps for these ages. So what's the deal? Maybe it has nothing to do with child labor laws and everything to do with gaslighting you. It's about making you think that one side of the aisle has a monopoly on morality while the other side of the aisle is selling off your children to the highest bidder. Let's pivot to immigration for a second. AOC is pretending that she's standing on business by preaching to us about core values of immigration in the United States. She's calling for pathway to citizenship and work permits, all wrapped up in a pretty little bow of humane, practical solutions. But don't you find it curious that these proposals sound more like a magical wish list than a workable plan? If you're able to break away from the hive mind for just a second, here's a thought. Maybe, just maybe, Republicans aren't the big bad wolves that AOC is trying to make them out to be. Perhaps they're just skeptical about throwing open the doors and hoping for the best. After all, isn't legal immigration a little bit more complex than just handing out permission slips to the American dream? Dig this. I am all for a comprehensive plan that includes a pathway to citizenship for those who have earned it. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking that AOC's approach is the only way to bake the apple pie that is America. Sometimes you need a little bit more than just sugar and spice to get it right. So as we continue this wild ride of political theater, let's remember to read between the lines. Because when AOC talks about child labor laws and immigration reform, you might just find that that story has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. And so we come to the million-dollar question that kind of hangs over us like a spotlight on center stage. Are we sacrificing the safety and education of our youth for the sake of economic gains? Or are we simply adapting to the ever-changing needs of the workforce? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the conversation going. Folks, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like it, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. I humbly thank you in advance for checking out my other videos. So until the next one, I'll catch you in the comments. I'm gone.